Good morning, Bethel. Here we are. Brandon's cracking open the Bible once again. And man, oh man, I think we've got a treat in store for you here this week. In fact, it's going to be quite the week of wisdom. That's what we've called this here, Brandon.
Oh yeah.
Brandon's very excited. He's got a new microphone that Michael Moose Stevenson has graciously provided him with.
That's right.
And he's trying to really...
trying to get my Barry White on.
It works.
Yeah, he doesn't need to hear that.
Baby.
Listen, we could all intentionally speak very low.
That doesn't work. That's
right. It doesn't work. We're talking wisdom. A week of wisdom.
A week of
with
wisdom.
The wise men of Bethel.
You tried there at the very end.
I can't find another W.
Couldn't make it work.
I couldn't.
Well, that's okay. That's all right. We don't necessarily have to have another W to get into Proverbs. We can just do it without that. So we can use all the letters of the alphabet to talk about the book of Proverbs today. And the book of Proverbs, along with Ecclesiastes, is what we call wisdom literature. So it's based off of the prayer. I think we've gone over this at this point. That Solomon, he talks with God there, and God promises to give him whatever it is that he asks for. And very wisely, King Solomon asked for wisdom. And in doing so, God not only gave him wisdom, but gave him every other blessing that he could ever want. So what we're seeing right here are the writings and the fruit of that prayer. I mean, I guess you could say that from the book of Proverbs. And man, there's just some good teaching in here, Brandon. I mean, some good words to live by, some good words of wisdom, right?
Yes, it is the wisdom of the Lord. And the book of Proverbs is just about the only topical book that exists in the Bible. The rest of the Bible is stories and teachings and songs and laws and things like that. The book of Proverbs is kind of a book about wise sayings that are somewhat topically arranged. So if you walk through it, you're going to see like it doesn't necessarily follow any order. Some of it will, most of it will not. And that content of it will be dealing with things like how do you handle money? How do you handle temptation? How do you handle the poor? What does kindness, generosity look like? Honesty, hard work.
It's all over the place.
It's just practical, day-to-day, how do you do things? But then there will be nuggets in there that are more, every now and then, theological nuggets.
Sure.
The horse is made ready for the day of battle, but victory belongs to the Lord. Something like that. The heart of the king is like a channel of water in the Lord's hands. He turns it wherever he will. So that's that's not like a practical, here's what you're supposed to do, but you live in light of that, but it is a theological statement.
It's reality we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think for me, just kind of while I'm reading through Proverbs, it's somewhat difficult. I feel like just about every verse you could just sit there and pause on and really think about because it's a lot of the chapters just in the book of Proverbs, they're not really unified by like one particular theme, or I mean it's just kind of like a shotgun with buckshot, it's just like all the wisdom and just all these different areas of life that you can use. A lot of fun, just kind of very challenging, certainly, as well.
And hey, there are how many chapters?
In the book of Proverbs, I don't know, 30-something?
31.
31.
How many days of the month are usually in?
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
31.
So a lot of people will read one chapter of Proverbs per day, depending on the day. So if it's June the 1st, today is, you're going to read Proverbs 1. And if it was June the 22nd, you would read Proverbs 22. And
or
a lot of people do
it. Your journal, you're going to read Proverbs 1 and 2 today.
If you are. But if you were daily doing the other thing, that's the way you kind of walk through it like that. And that's a good practice. I've done that before. I don't always do that, but I've tried to do that from time to time, and you'll find yourself this. It's like, yeah, I've read this before. I've read this quite a bit. I see what you're saying, but it's still good. It just kind of gets into your mind, and then you start remembering some things and committing them to memory and things like that. So it's just a great practice to do, is to read the book of Proverbs. Read them to your kids too. That's good.
Yeah. Well, as you were reading them to yourself this past week, Brandon, was there anything in particular you gleaned here from the first 2 chapters of Proverbs?
Well,
your HEAR acronym.
Really, first of all, the book of Proverbs is about biblical wisdom. And biblical wisdom is about how to live for the Lord in the fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So biblical wisdom is about how do I live in a godly way, godly character.
Is there a difference between biblical wisdom and unbiblical wisdom? Or would we just call that foolishness?
Yeah, we would. So the fool in the book of Proverbs is a wicked person. He is not necessarily dumb or uneducated. Right. He's just a person that doesn't live like God's in control. So, and we can live like that temporarily, can't we? Even as Christians, you can do foolish things. That means you live in a way that does not honor God, and it's not good for you. So the thing about you need to understand about the book of Proverbs or biblical wisdom, whether it's Psalm 1 or some different psalms that are kind of wisdom psalms, is what the writer's trying to say is, here's the way of the Lord. If you walk in this way, there is blessing and fruit and goodness there.
It's going to go well for you.
If you don't walk in this way, it's not going to go so well for you in this life and in the life to come. So it's oftentimes a warning, and that's what you hear a lot of in the first few chapters of Proverbs. It's kind of like, do this and live. Do this and you won't live.
Now, are these promises, Brandon, or are these just basically general truisms, that are generally, true if you just, if you do A and B, then C will typically follow? Or is it just...
Yeah, well, the answer to that is yes, yes, and yes. It's complicated because there are some proverbs that you're going to come across and it's going to be like, the wicked never prosper. Well, that's not true.
I've seen a lot of wicked seemingly prosper.
What he's trying to say there is if you live foolishly, with dishonesty, 90% of the time that's going to catch up with you, and it's going to be bad.
At some point.
That's right. So they're not always. All of them are not exactly promises in like some math formula. And that's helpful to understand because there's like the proverb that says, "Train up a child in the way she should go, and in the end he will not depart from it." And some parents are like, they claim that as a promise. That's a principle, right? It's not exactly a guarantee that your child is going to follow the Lord and live the way you hope they live just because you took them to church. So, but then there are some verses that seem to be more of like the promise or true, this is always true. Like earlier I said, the horse is made ready for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. That's kind of a theological statement, and you don't have a ton of those in the book of Proverbs, but when you do, those are, you can be assured, those are always guaranteed. Yeah. So it takes a little bit of discernment to kind of work through it, but as you handle it more and more, I think you'll see that that's kind of what it's, you'll learn how to handle it. So today I picked up on verse 31.
Chapter 2 there?
Chapter 1, actually.
Okay.
Well, it's just kind of a smidge of a verse here. It says at the end of it is therefore they shall eat the fruit of their way. Okay, he's talking about reaping the fruit. What you sow is what you reap. And then in the next chapter, verses 16 through 19, he's saying, if you depart and don't follow the way of the wicked, he says, so you'll be delivered from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words, who forsakes the companion of her youth, and forgets the covenant of her God, for her house sinks down to death, and her paths to the departed. None who go to her come back, nor do they regain the paths of life. And I think, again, the bigger principle there he's trying to come up with is that if you walk in the way of the wicked, the path will lead you to destruction.
Yeah.
If you walk in the way of the righteous, the path will lead you to fruitfulness and blessing. And so one of the things I wrote down here is that the fear of the Lord, don't want to minimize biblical redemption and restoration, and that God can restore the years the locusts have eaten, as the prophet says, and that God can renew us and fix us and do wonderful, wonderful things. I'm not trying to minimize that, but biblical wisdom is more preventative than it is restorative. So when you're reading the Proverbs, the aim is like, I'm trying to get you not to go down this path.
Avoid these.
Yeah, don't even go there.
Right.
Don't get yourself stuck in that kind of life right there. So it's just important, I think, to remember that. And the flesh, you will see this. It may not be in those verses that I read right there, but Solomon will use an image about the forbidden woman. Sometimes I think he's talking literally. Sometimes I think it's metaphorically. And it will say, it's calling out to you. And wisdom calls out.
It's personification.
That's right. So there's this wisdom crying out to you, and so is the flesh calling out to you. And you got to choose which one of those you're going to listen to. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all certainly a common experience we can all relate to each and every day. Flesh wages war against the soul, and certainly wisdom and the forbidden woman both equally call out to you. And it's who will you listen to? Who will you heed? Yeah, those calls there. So.
Well, and the image too that when you see with the woman calling out to you, it's interesting. He's like, later on he'll be like, she says to you, my husband has gone away on business.
Yes.
He's gone away on business. He won't be back for another month. Why don't you come? My bed is full of roses and all this stuff. And, it's really a picture of Genesis 3 in some ways.
Man, I was just thinking that.
It's just like, what does temptation do? It just says, it's never going to end up bad. It's going to be good. This is going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. Do it. There's no price to pay for this. This will work out all really good in the end. And his point is no, it doesn't. It never does.
I was thinking about, that's a good point, because, Eve saw that the fruit was good and it was delight to the eyes and all that. So, all the kind of senses were engaged there. But, if you remember in that story there, Genesis 3, she's having this conversation with the serpent about eating the fruit, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and she actually adds to a little bit of the command of what God had initially given. And, a lot of people will say, well, hey, this was an error on Eve's part, because Eve said, we can't even touch it. And God never said that in his initial command, but, would you say that there was some wisdom there just because it was more of a kind of a preventative measure that they maybe Eve and Adam had talked about?
Yeah, don't even go there, don't even put it, get close and put that in your hand, because then it would get harder to resist.
Right.
So, yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
Well, all right, guys. That's probably all the time we've got here for today. But once again, do not fret. A week of wisdom coming at you all week long here. So
if you wisdom from the Word.
There it is. There's the W.
With the wise men.
Oh, man, you're on a roll here today.
It's the new mic.
It is. It's something about it there. Thanks to Michael Moose Stevenson on that here. Well, tomorrow, guys, we are going to be right back in the book of Proverbs. Not going to have to travel far. Proverbs 3 through 4. So that's where we're going to be. And read ahead with us on that. And we look forward to talking with you guys about it then. All right. Dude.
What?
I was going to ask Moose here if he's got our new intro.
Do we get a new intro?
Well, he was talking to me about it.